Shalom, and welcome to another video on the Genesis 49ers page. Today's video, we're going to tackle the topic that this brother, known as Garfield, goes by the name Garfield and has a quote-unquote dagger squad, is posing to the Hebrew Israelites. And I'm going to let him bring his thesis, and I'm going to bring my antithesis. So let's commence.
Last week right here that anybody that can provide evidence that anybody who came on a ship to America was a Hebrew Israelite. That's what I said. I'm going to ask Gorilla Hebrew right now.
So you heard what he said. He asked the Hebrews, which we are Israelites, whether you like it or not. That's who you are genetically. But anyway, his question is, can we prove that anybody that came over to the Americas was a Hebrew Israelite? Okay? That's what his question was. Garfield, you about to get your question answered today. And very scholastic and educational way. So, as you can see on your screen, it says Jews, Israelites to America, and we're going to answer his question with the first slide. It says ships. Many of the Jews who were banished from Portugal by John the Second settled in the West Indies. How did they get there? By ship. Did they take a plane? Did they fly over there? They came by ships. John Bigelow, who visited Jamaica in 1850, saw descendants of these Jews and say they were Negroid. This comes from Nature's No Color Line by J. Rogers, but he also quotes those books of John Bigelow and the book prior to it, where John Bigelow actually expresses and actually describes what he's seen when he went to Jamaica and how these Jews were black. John Bigelow actually says in his book he never seen black Jews before until he came to Jamaica, because we know we had Edomite Jews, or so-called Caucasian Jews, taking our legacy and taking our names and portraying as us, and calling themselves Ashkenazi Jews. Anyway, this is proof that he asked. Remember, the question that was posed was, can you prove that one Israelite ever came over here to the Americas by ships? Right here, boom. We just proved them wrong. We answered this question. Moving on. This is from C.A. Wessler's Delaware's Forgotten Folk, the Story of the Moors and Nanticokes, Philadelphia University of Pennsylvania, 1943. In 711 A.D., the Moors crossed the Straits of Gibraltar and began their conquest on the Spanish peninsula. After governing Spain for 800 years, the Moors were defeated by the Christians, and many of their descendants were sold to the slave traders who brought them in shackles to America. Some of these Moors were Mozarabis or Sephardic Jews from Gadala, identified with ancient Egyptians. Why? Because first of all, they were dark skinned, and our history goes back to Egypt under Joseph, and then after the 400 years of oppression, then we left. But this is showing that we were sold as slaves over here. The Sephardic Jews were sold as slaves to the Americas. The first set of group of slaves were Creoles, okay? Or Criollas, right? They came from Spain and Portugal. And I'm not talking about 1619, but even those set of slaves, they had Spanish names, okay? I'm talking about in the 1500s, all right? When they were sold to the Caribbean islands and so on and so forth. Now, Swart, this is from a book called The Jews and the Blacks in the Early Modern World by Jonathan Scorch, page 181, because we're going to prove that those Jews, Sephardic Jews that came from Spain and Portugal that were sold to the Americas as slaves, okay, were a dark-skinned people. It says, toward the latter end of the 18th century, one finds the same changeability of the Jews expressed in the updated nuances and geographic context. The Reverend Samuel Stanhope Smith wrote that the Jews are fair in Britain, Germany. Those are those Ashkenazi, so-called Ashkenazi Jews that stole our language, stole our customs, and stole who we were and our identity, right? But brown in France, they were brown skinned in France, and in Turkey, so they were brown skinned men and women in France and Turkey. Swarthy meaning dark skinned in Portugal and Spain. So these Israelites that you prove to me, show me where a Hebrew Israelite came to America. We're showing you right now, and we're showing you that those Sephardic Jews that came over to America were swarthy. Swarthy in Portugal and Spain, olive in Syria and in Chaldea, tawny or copper colored in Arabia and Egypt. And this is from Samuel Stanhope Smith. And this is from the latter end of the 18th century. They understood this, that the Sephardic Jews were black. And guess what? They got sold over here as slaves. Perhaps the best indication that the valences involved in such distinctions also conveyed metaphysical import of the title in the mid-17th century English translation of conversionary tract aimed at Jews by the formerly Jewish Samuel of Morocco, the blessed Jew of Morocco. A blackamoor made white being a demonstration of the true Messiah out of the law and prophets by Rabbi Samuel. So the blessed Jew of Morocco was called a blackamoor. He was dark-skinned. Christian thought, especially among Iberians, often equated Jews in black in moral manner. The 15th century Portuguese poet Alvaro de Brito explicated the term Marrano in the following lines, punning in the general negative meaning of Negro. Okay, so the Jews are always associated with being black. Right? Next slide. Each New World colony, and this is from the Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean by Edward Kritzler, page 4, because you find Hebrew graves in Jamaica. And what we read, what was the first slide that we read? The first quote we read was from Nature Knows North Carolina. It was about John Bigelow seeing the descendants of the Jews that were cast out of their land, cast out of Portugal by John II of Portugal, right? And they resettled in Jamaica, and John Bigelow talks about them as being Negroes, that they were dark-skinned individuals. All right? You want to see a Hebrew Israelite in America? We're going to give you one. We're going to give you a few, but actually. But anyway, this is from Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean by Edward Kritzler, page 4. Each New World colony had an underground community of Jews known only to one another and their brethren in other colonies. Together, conversos in the New World dominated commerce. In the 16th century, when the known world doubled in size and international trade became big business, they established a trade network that spanned the globe. Because you know our people. You've seen Black Wall Street. When you read about the history of the Jews through economical, political, all forms of struggles, we were able to make it as a people. That's what makes us so great. We survived through many captivities. Other nations, they fall and crumble when they go through those persecutions. But us, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you persevere through it. But it says, in Lima, Peru, the Inquisition reported the city is thick with Jews. I thought no Hebrews. You made it seem as if Hebrews didn't come to the Americas. But Lima, Peru was thick with Jews according to the Inquisition. Everything goes through their hands, from brocade to sackcloth, diamonds to cumin seeds, to the most precious pearl and the vilest Guyana black. Because you know our people, we get the hustler mentality. Gotta get it. In Potosa, Bolivia, with a silver mountain, the Inquisitor reported the silver trade is almost exclusive in the hands of crypto Jews. So that's from the Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean by Edward Kritzler, page 4. Moving on. It says marriage with non-Jews, or this is from the book Rafi Pata's work, The Indios Israelitas de Mexico. Marriage with non-Jews, Dr. Pata reported, some of these new Christians scattered and hid in outlying towns and villages, marrying, for lack of women of their own kind, native Indian girls, and passing on their heritage of their faith to their children. So these Sephardic Jews would come over here, and this is in Mexico, by the way. And we're going to talk about their posterity in a minute. They came over here, Hebrew Israelite in Americas, and they bred with the Indian women, which are also Israelites as well. Okay, they were from the tribe of Issachar as well, and they gave their customs and their knowledge to their children. And we're going to see their posterity. Next slide. Here's their posterity. The Casa de Dios, they claim descent of Sephardic Israelites. Okay, this is in Mexico. This is Monterrey, Mexico, where you can find these descendants of these people. Okay, this was taken in the early 1900s, by the way. Right? Okay. Now a lot of people try to bash these people, but the fact of the matter is they descend from these Sephardic Jews that came over here in early colonial periods. Moving on. Now, this is from the Foreign Missionary Background and Indigenous Evangelizing in Igbo Land by Nicum Hygienius. Page 113. Evangelizing, my bad, in Igbo Land by Nicum Hygienius. Page 113. It says, when the British chartered the Royal Niger, or nigger, company emerged. Because that word niger really not pronounced niger. That's a modern pronunciation. The original Greek was niger. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It says, Niger company emerged. Things changed with Germany and other competitors alike because Britain claimed these areas that under the influence of the slave trade. The two parts were then transformed and bonded warehouses for slave trade. Within a short time, 20 years later, about 370,000 men, women, and children were transported from there as slaves. According to the account available from the British Commercial Company, Curtin reports that between 1678 and 1698, the figure of slaves bought by this company alone from the Delta regions, Benin, and part of Igbo land was estimated at 6,000. Relying on the reports of the Alagoweki, there were other estimations from merchants like Barbot and at Bunny, and the annual number of slaves brought by the Europeans were reaching 15,000 to and 20,000. And for the Igbo as a people, the truth reads, 3/4 of the slaves from Bunny were Igbos, probably 16,000 yearly within the period 1800 to 1820. The Igbo as a race suffered most under the inhumane trafficking on human beings. Many of them was captured in wars, intertribal wars among the Nigerian indigenes, due to the boundary disputes and other interpersonal conflicts. Apart from the Yoruba wars of the 19th century, that became a major source of slave dealing and supplies along the coast of eastern Nigeria. Muslim invaders who advanced their spheres of operation from the north also pressed and pounded upon the Igbo for the same deal. Sometimes slave raiding gangs came in by surprise and made games out of the Igbo people, like many other Africans of this area. Especially from the borders and coastlines, these daily collections were brought to the contact areas, and in the words of the Oduyoyi, one of the slave markets of the interiors, for their transaction were later sold to different traders who would in turn march them to the coast for transportation to America. Now, why am I showing this? I'm showing this to show you that the Igbos were sold to America. You know, a lot of people know about the Igbo land in Virginia, because of the slaves that were taken from Igbo land were brought into to Virginia and the West Coast. I mean the East Coast, eastern coast of the 13 colonies, or what is now known North America. Okay. Now, what about these Igbos? We're going to get into who the Igbos were. Aluda Equiano, if you don't know him, he wrote a personal autobiography of himself, and he talked about his homeland and how that his people's customs lined up with Hebraic and Judaic customs. Why? Because the Igbos, if you don't know by now, newsflash, the Igbos are descended of authentic Hebrew Israelites. Okay? And we have the book Oluda Equiano's work that he wrote himself as proof to that. Moving on, let's talk about the posterity. The posterity of the Igbos today know that they come from the Israelite lineage. Now, a lot of them have been infiltrated by Ashkenazi Jewish teachings, but that doesn't deflect from the fact that they are, in fact, Israelites. They are the Israelites that the Bible speaks of. They've been teaching this since slavery time, before that, okay, the time of antiquity, that they come from the land of Israel, that they fled after the fall of the temple of 70 AD, after the sack of Jerusalem, and they fled into West Africa. Okay, that's the oral tradition within their people. But a lot of people they think they're smart and they think they can take away the history and customs that amount to thousands of of millennium of data that shows and with great detail that our people are Israelites. They want to take that and strip that away from us. Okay, but we know for a fact that these people are Israelites. There's a book you can actually go purchase to get a basic understanding of this. It's the Igbos in Israel, an intercultural study of the largest Jewish diaspora by Remy Yonah. Um, so this is what this book is going into. You can purchase it. And I brought this out because we know the Igbos went to slavery. They were Hebrews, right? They were Israelites. So answering his question, we can show through a multitude of sources that Hebrew Israelites actually came to this land and throughout the Americas. All right. So with that, I'm going to say shalom. Pray that this was insightful and encouraging, and brothers are able to be educated by the material. Read the sources. Go back and write these sources down. Note these sources. So when scoffers and gainsayers come, you can educate them and maybe win some of them over. Be if the Lord will. So with that, I say shalom.